screen here. Oh. Welcome, folks who are coming into this CURC webinar. You're in the right place. It's 2 p.m. Thursday, August 15th, and you are CURC webinar. So thank you very much. I'm just trying to share my screen here, and for some reason it's not opening. There we go. There we go. Folks seeing that on your end? Great. In just a second. Well, thanks, folks, who have joined us today for this CURC webinar. This is the fourth installment in CURC's 2024 webinar series, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Today's topic is integrating waste reduction and diversion to academics. Trying to move to the next slide, and it's not letting me do that for some reason. There we go. Perfect. I'm Corey Berman. I am the Zero Waste Program Manager at the University of Vermont and a member of the webinar committee of CURC, and I'll be your host and moderator today. For those of you not familiar with CURC, we're a community of zero waste champions in higher education. We are a free member-based organization that works towards waste reduction and diversion and sustainable materials management through information sharing, educational support, networking opportunities between staff, faculty, and students. Today's session is part of our free webinar series that runs throughout the year. The webinar series is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational and educational topics related to collegiate recycling, zero waste, and sustainable materials management. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, you can visit Zoom's support center by visiting support.zoom.us. To avoid background noise, we've placed all but our panelists' lines on mute. During the session, we encourage you to submit questions at any time using the Q&A function, and we'll get to as many of these as possible at the end of the presentations. For general comments and notes throughout the presentations, please feel free to use the chat function in the dashboard. Copies of today's presentation slides will be available to download, and the full recording will be available to stream on the CURC website, which is www.curc3r.org, which you can hopefully see in the chat. I also want to take a moment to highlight and encourage folks to join the Recycle listserv. This is a great resource that covers a wide variety of topics related to recycling and waste reduction programs at university campuses, as well as topics of interest to persons responsible for planning and implementing these programs. Subscription to Recycle is free and open to anyone. To subscribe, please click on the link that will be dropped into the chat. You'll see a button which reads Ask to Join Group. And once you complete that, you'll be able to post and respond to messages, as well as receive messages and emails from the listserv. Before we begin, I do want to shout out to Plan, who's our sponsor for today, the Post Landfill Action Network. We have Alex Freed joining us. They equip students with resources and tools necessary to understand the waste crisis and lead solutions on their campus. Alex Freed is Plan's executive director, and he joins us now to say a few words. So I'm going to hand it over to Alex. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. I don't want to take up too much time. I super appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all. So we're sponsoring this webinar, and part of the reason why we're sponsoring it is because the next webinar, which I'm sure, Corey, you'll give a list of like upcoming webinars, we are going to be highlighting one of the programs that we work on, which is called the Atlas Zero Waste Fellowship. And we work with campuses to set up comprehensive strategic visions and zero waste plans around like long-term zero waste planning. So the next webinar in October is about zero waste planning. And so we'll talk with you more then in October. I'm gonna put in the chat here, rather than like sharing slides and like doing a whole presentation, I'm just gonna put a few slides in the chat. If you want to look at them, you're welcome to look at them. You do not have to. But in the slides, I included a few links to upcoming events and things that are happening in the next few months. So for example, we're currently running an ROI course to help campuses map out the return on investment analysis for switching multiple dining facilities over to reusable to go. We are also going to be doing a peer advising cohort in the fall. So if you all have students on your campuses who you've hired or who volunteer to work in free and thrift store spaces on campuses, we're going to be doing 2 calls in October and 2 calls in November as a peer advising cohort for students to sort of talk with each other about the operations of free and thrift store spaces on campuses. So there's a sign up form in the slides if you want to check that out. We're going to be hosting a series of zero waste sessions at the upcoming ASHE conference, and we'll be doing our regular annual 4-part series on move-out programs. So every year we do a series of workshops for campuses who are looking to expand or start move-out programs. That'll be starting in November, and we'll do sessions in November, 2 in February, and 1 in March. So if you all either have a move-out program that you want to sort of build out, or if you're looking to start a move-out program, we have a whole bunch of resources, and also we'll be doing a series of webinars around that. So if you want to sign up for our newsletter to get more about that information, or if you want to look at those individual programs, those are in the slides that I put in the chat. Pass it back to you, Corey.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alex, so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate all your hard work in this field. It's great. Yeah, it's great to see that ROI calculator come through too. So thank you very much, and thank you for sponsoring this webinar. Before we move on, I just want to do a quick mention about ASHE, who is our promotional partner. Due to that, so they have the ASHE conference coming up in the end of October. So for folks who are interested, CURC is offering, and ASHE is offering a $50 discount with the code that you see here on our screen. There should be a link in the chat about this, and we highly recommend you checking out this conference. For those who are unfamiliar with ASHE, it's a great conference. This is the second year they're in person after COVID. There was a lot of great energy last year in Boston, and now this year it's all the way out in Anaheim, California. So sometimes can be challenging for folks on the East Coast to get out there, but I know the California folks don't have to fly all the way east, so they're excited. There's going to be presentations from folks here at CURC. There'll be presentations from folks on the Zero Waste Campus Council and more. So again, there's a discount there, code you see, and we highly recommend checking out that conference and expo. We want to thank our partners at ASHE for promoting that. Now on to our panel for today. We're going to start. We have a great panel featuring Julie Muir and Christopher Kuntzsch from Stanford, and Deborah Steinberg and Fethiye Ozis from Carnegie Mellon. We're going to start with the folks from Stanford. As Associate Director of Zero Waste Systems at Stanford, Julie oversees waste operations and leads the development of zero waste strategies in the Climate Action Plan and the implementation of the Zero Waste Plan to meet the university's goal of zero waste by 2030. She enjoys using her 30 years of experience in the waste industry to work with students in the campus community on waste reduction and educating on the connection between zero waste, sustainable materials management, and the circular economy and climate change. Julie is past president and senior advisor to the California Resource Recovery Association. As the strategy manager in Stanford University's Office of Sustainability, Christopher's key responsibilities include evaluating existing sustainability programs and initiatives, designing and implementing internal strategic planning processes, building leadership capacity, forming strategic partnerships with operational and academic partners, and exploring opportunities for the campus to expand its educational offerings as a living laboratory for sustainability. With a focus on strategy and partnerships, he is dedicated to developing a successful path for the office that drives positive change for the institution and helps exchange best practices with local, regional, and global collaborators. So thank you so much to you both for being here. I'm going to exit my screen and hand it over to you folks if I can figure out how to do it. Oh, there we go. And now you should be able to share your screen, Julie, and
no, oh, there you go. Perfect.
We'll be off and running. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Corey. I'm gonna share my screen here and make sure we got that up and running. Okay, so can everyone see the first slide?
Yep.
Great. Let's go ahead. Christopher, you want to lead us
All
off?
right. Yeah, I'll kick it off. Thanks, Julie. And thanks, Corey, for having us. And thanks to Julie and her team for inviting me to co-present today. As we get going, my role here is to kind of create a bit of context on how our office has approached facilitating and enhancing collaboration between academic and operational partners to support our zero waste efforts and initiatives, and as well as other operational sustainability priorities, and also supporting the mission of Stanford in its academic academic mission. Next slide. Okay, so in recent years, we conducted a strategic planning process, kind of underwent a whole revamp of our office, and we articulated a new vision and a new mission. Here, our vision is to drive intergenerational well-being of people and planet through our operational sustainability efforts. That's our mission. So namely, convening and empowering people, curating data and stories. And then the circled one in three is leveraging the campus as a living laboratory for the development of scalable solutions. That's kind of where we're going to be focusing a lot of our time. And then advancing systems, processes, and practices that exemplify innovation, equity, and excellence. So today we want to dive into this third vision pillar, campus as a living lab. And here, we're seeking to activate the campus as a living lab that solves operational challenges, drives sustainability innovation, and develops the next generation of change leaders. Next slide. So going a bit deeper now and also into the history of our campus, there's been a lot of collaboration between operational units and academic departments over the years. So there's been a lot of different units that have come together to collaborate, and this has been mostly ad hoc over time. So that's not necessarily focused on operational priorities, not necessarily by design creating co-benefits for all involved. And that has at times left some of the collaborators with sort of a negative imprint on being engaged in living lab initiatives over time. So that's increased some reluctance of being engaged. So this is why we thought it was a really good opportunity. Next slide. As we're kind of celebrating a lot of Stanford's success over time in our operational initiatives, and then the launch of our new School of Sustainability. And there's been a lot of new interest, both from students, researchers, but also from our operational partners to kind of meet this galvanizing moment where we've had a lot of success on the operational side. We have a new institution dedicated to sustainability on the academic side. So we decided to invest heavily in campus as a living lab as a way to bolster our operational efforts. Next slide. So we've seen in the past that collaboration with academic partners can be a really powerful enhancement to operational effectiveness. And with this in mind, we developed a memorandum of understanding, kind of the first of its kind, with the Doerr School of Sustainability this last year. And that agreement revolves around the following outcomes. So we have really a focus on ensuring that we're engaged on high impact projects that do create co-benefits for everyone involved. We want to optimize the balance of risk and benefit to operations while also advancing our academic mission. We want to establish processes that facilitate collaboration, and we want to encourage a rich exchange of knowledge in topic areas of mutual interest. Highlights and focus areas for this past year included the Living Lab Fellowship Program for Sustainability. That included a number of projects in the zero waste specific space that Julie will kind of illuminate those further. And other focus areas includes things like how we identify and review projects that have an operational impact, how we process, how we develop enhancements to facilitate collaboration, focus on new construction, climate action, as well as communications and branding. Next slide. So in the bigger picture of our living lab, we are building out our program to coordinate partnerships on these 4 key pathways. We have research partnerships, academic course collaborations, experiential learning that involves our fellowship and also our internship positions, as well as site tours of our sustainability infrastructure. Next slide. So just digging a little further into the Living Lab Fellowship Program. So this is where we really see the tremendous power and impact of student-led projects. These are pre-vetted and guided by our operational staff partners, supported by an academic programmatic container that develops change leadership skills, and provides project management opportunities to students that are interested in really getting hands-on experience solving real-world sustainability challenges. And we're really strategic in the way that we pick the projects, how we match the students, and we provide a structure with an academic course, with staff mentorship, and expert advisors that facilitate the student and project success. So Julie's going to share more about some of the zero waste specific projects in the fellowship and beyond. But here's a couple of highlights from last year's cohort. So we had students working on things like reducing embodied carbon in construction, carbon accounting and sequestration, scheduling for sustainability, which is really a building level energy efficiency project. And we had a tremendous feedback from mentors and students alike, and advancing a lot of our operational priorities through this. This coming year, we're expanding the program from 15 projects to 30 projects with even more diverse range of project topics, including the zero waste projects that Julie's going to share more about. And so with that kind of context, I'll hand it over to Julie to share more about zero waste.
Great. Thanks, Christopher. I'm glad you all are here so we can share some of our experiences. I'm going to kind of dive now into specifically what we've been able to do with zero waste and academic integration. And one of the terms we use a lot is operational sustainability, saying that, you're doing all of this learning in your classrooms. How do we take our own operation that we want to make better and integrate academics into that? So at Stanford, we've got this vision to establish a model wasteless community that takes scalable, holistic systems approach to advancing zero waste culture and waste justice. We look at we have a couple of different examples of how we're doing this, where first we found this kind of perfect spot between, we have a researcher in our graduate school of business who actually wants to focus on messaging. And so we kind of fortuitously found each other and working on a couple of research projects. So this doesn't really involve student fellows or student interns. Professor Wong has a grad student, but we're looking at these messaging, and we're using our operation. We're sending out these surveys to people on campus that we went through this big building transition where we've added single stream and composting to every building. And we're asking for people, like, before we make the transition, what are their thoughts? And then what are their thoughts after the transition? And we're using different messaging. And all of that data is coming back and going to this professor to help us understand what's the win-win message when we're talking to people about waste. Should we talk about their individual benefits, or should we talk about the collective benefit that this benefits Stanford? Should we talk about the environmental benefits of proper sorting and waste reduction and reuse? Or should we talk a little bit more about the physical? We went to a desk side self-service model instead of having custodians come to desks. So in that messaging, what was the best way to do that? So we were able to engage our faculty member in this research and come out, and we're still waiting on the results of that to come out on exactly how should our messaging go out. Another thing that we worked with this same professor on is, what types of messaging help drive behavior change to reduce food waste specifically. We have a project now, right now, using Winnow Solutions to measure the food waste that we have in our dining halls. And again, this is an ongoing research project. And so we're able to collect this data through our operations and then funnel that over to our researcher to then gather the data, use her own grad students to analyze that data and give us back the things that we can use, every day in the messaging that we reach on campus. Another thing that we have done in terms of academic integration is working with we have a D school, a design school, actually known as the D school, and working again with a faculty member to design a course and some prompts within that course. There's lots of different prompts that they could use. And we were able to put in there, how can we normalize proper waste sorting and the common use of reusable mugs, cups, and utensils? How do we go about that? So we gave that problems statement, plus the stigmatizing the waste system and overcoming taboos associated with interacting with waste. So we gave these problem statements to the D school, and they came up with 200 student-driven solutions, which is actually a lot of solutions. We're still working our way through it. It's like kind of the benefit and the challenge, of course, is you get these solutions and kind of going through them and figuring out how could we operationalize some of those solutions. And we just love that we got this from our students instead of just from, staff and from faculty, but like on the ground, how would this work? And we've got some great ideas, and we're again trying to figure out how we can operationalize those. Another thing we did in the D school is they have a class called Design for Extreme Affordability. And these students have to work very fast in developing their kind of the D school process of generating ideas. And we asked them to address food insecurity by reducing food waste. And how do we increase recycling in labs? Something we found really challenging is to reach people in labs. And so we had 2 groups of students who went through, as you can see in the pictures, all kinds of ideation process. And this is them learning how to do this process, as well as developing some tips for us. And then again, we get this chance they present it to our group, and then we get to ask them a lot of questions and then figure out just how we might integrate these into our operations. Another one going along with the Living Lab fellowship that we have, we were able to bring 2 fellows in, and we had 2 of them. One of them, we're a little bit unique. I don't know another university that has 2 public elementary schools on their campus, but we do. And there are around 1,000 people on this campus, from the kindergartners to the teachers and the principals. Plus, we have 7 preschools on campus. So we hired a zero waste fellow who went through the process of going through the change management class, developing an advisory board, which include the principals and the zero waste champions at these schools, as well as other people from campus and even outside of campus who have expertise in working with K-12 schools to develop methods and strategies on how we would integrate with them, these schools, and promote waste reduction, reuse, and recycling and composting. So it was an incredible process to use a student to do this. And honestly, the student made it a lot further than we have as staff, and bringing together a strategy that we're actually now going to implement. So we had these interns not doing so much operational work as developing that big level strategy, doing all of those meetings and kind of saying what works, what doesn't work, developing this final thing that we can now implement with a staff member. We also had a Sam Bunk, another fellow who's a chemical engineering PhD student, who worked on operationalizing waste justice. And this is just to say that we recognize that our waste facilities are located in communities that either have a high percentage of low-income people or a high percentage of color. And so we kind of have a real, if we care about environmental justice, and we do, then we should figure out ways to reduce that impact. And so we had an intern actually study this, gather the literature, did a literature review, come up with some ways, some actions that we could take at Stanford to minimize the impacts of waste justice on our surrounding communities. And it's been really impactful to have someone just really concentrate on that, using this fellowship as part of that process. Again, going out and getting the information, developing an advisory board, talking to people about it, and then bringing it back home so we can try to operationalize it. And then lastly, we our Living Lab Fellowship also includes our interns. So we have several interns that had other projects. And again, this is a little bit less work than the Zero Waste Fellows, where they have to take a class, they have to meet with lots of different people. Our interns do similar work, but don't take the class. And these are some projects that we were able on the right to work with our interns on, again, working on that operational sustainability, getting them to go out and do some of that hard work of gathering data, gathering input, and then bringing it back home. And then we have an annual symposium where all of these students come and share their ideas. And what I love about it is their experience in this field, I think, will be amazing as they go forth, either at the university, if they're a sophomore or a junior, and or new in their career here at Stanford, but also when they leave, they've experienced this and can take this wherever they go. And then lastly, we have worked with our contracts, with our waste service provider contracts, either our waste service hauler or our processor and our composter, to schedule tours of those facilities with the classes. And so we have an Introduction to Earth Systems class where every student has to take a tour outside of class. And we are able to give them several options where they come out and learn from the people in the industry about what their challenges are and what the role that they play. And so we've reached over 300 students that way by coming on our on-campus facility with our waste service provider, but also expanding that to, for instance, we've taken our robotics team to our MRF, our material recovery facility contractor, so that they can actually see robots in action and the challenges that are all there for them to kind of come back and think about. So we've had some really good experience integrating the tours. Here's our tour of the recycling facility, so that they can integrate that in, right? I mean, what a great thing to graduate someone in robotics who's actually had experience at a waste facility. And the book hasn't been written. There's a lot of things that need to happen in the future. And we maybe are, including these people in these tours is really helping us maybe improve things for the future. So we really see students as a catalyst for change and engaging the students, the faculty on campus in ways that we can say, we have issues right here on campus that really deserve the research that they can then promote. They don't have to travel. They can just come right here to us and engage them. And then we include them and make them shine in front of their faculty members, in front of their peers, so that they can be seen as role models on campus to go about. So again, we have a lot of good tools. If you go to sustainablestanford.edu/living lab, you can watch our video. We have a project library that you might see compares to something that you have on campus that you might like to share and or use as the project description to get you going. We are happy to share our resources and go from there. Oops, trying not to show that video. Okay. Thank you guys so much. And again, happy to answer questions at the end or connect with us offline as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie and Christopher. That was great. Great. I know Stanford isn't perfect, but sometimes it seems like it. So doing a really, really good job there. I really appreciate it. We do have one question, which I'll try to get to before we move on to our next presenters. The question comes, it says, what method was used to collect the data on messaging?
Yeah, I can answer that. We are using Qualtrics. We designed our survey. Another thing we have going for us is we have a sustainable behavior social scientist on our team that helps us with these surveys, because you got to ask the question right in order to get the feedback in a way that is measurable and operational. So we work on these surveys and send them out pre and post. And so it's all through Qualtrics.
Wonderful. Thank you. I feel like we could do a whole nother webinar on surveys, because that's it elicits a ton of great info, but sometimes it can be challenging coming up with the right questions and finding the right audience and getting them to actually respond to them. So it's great to use it. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, and in fact, that would be a great webinar, Corey. Let's do it, because I think it's a lot to learn for us kind of generalists who know a little bit about everything, but not a lot about one thing.
Yes.
Surveying is a science in and of its own, and getting people to answer the survey, which is something that we have struggled with, right? You get these responses, but then 2 people have responded. How can you take it and run with that? So Angela, who's also on the call, is trying to work on ways to increase response rates. So let's do that sometime.
Sounds good. We shall. Okay, moving on. If anybody can follow it, it's the wonderful presenters from Carnegie Mellon University. We have Debbie Steinberg with us and Fethiye Ozis from Carnegie Mellon. Deborah Steinberg has been working in the sustainability and nonprofit fields for more than 20 years. As Carnegie Mellon University's Green Practices and Sustainability Manager, she provides vision, leadership, and action to advance campus environmental sustainability. Prior to joining CMU, she worked as Director of Sustainability Initiatives at Knox College, where she collaborated with students, faculty, and staff to nurture the campus's culture of sustainability. Before that, she was the staff executive for SITES, or SITES Educational Programming, managing professional development for the American Society of Landscape Architects, and worked as a science and environmental educator here in the States and overseas. She holds an MLA from Chatham University, Masters of Education from University of Illinois at Chicago, and a BS in Resource Ecology and Management from the University of Michigan. She also co-chairs the Higher Education Climate Consortium of Pittsburgh and is a member of the Clean Pittsburgh Commission. And with her today is Dr. Fethiye Ozis, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Associate Teaching Professor in Civil and Environmental Engineering at CMU, holding a BS in Environmental Engineering from Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Turkey, and MS and PhD degrees from University of Southern California at Los Angeles. She's a licensed professional environmental engineer, and she's known for innovative and inclusive teaching. She enjoys every dimension of being an engineering educator. Very important, engineering educator, and teaches across the curriculum from first year to graduate level courses in environmental engineering. Her own intersectionality led to her passion for researching pathways into engineering for underrepresented minorities. Beyond academia, Dr. Ozis indulges in mentorship, guiding students to academic and professional success. She has mentored several undergraduate students to develop proposals and pursue award-winning research on novel biotechnologies for sustainable water and wastewater treatment. Her community engagement and service reflect her commitment to societal impact. She has been an ACSE Excellence in Civil Engineering Education Fellow since 2016. She is an impressive bio. I'm almost done. She's also a mentor for Engineering for Our Planet, which is the EOP under the American Society for Engineering Education. She's earned multiple teaching, research, and service awards from Northern Arizona University and American Society for Engineering Education. Thank you, Debbie and Fethiye, for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Corey.
Thanks, Corey. All right, I'm going to get us started. So Fethiye and I are here today. We have titled our talk "Circular Economy: A Curriculum Collaboration," and we do not need to reintroduce ourselves because that was a very good introduction. So we'll give you a little bit of information about Carnegie Mellon, just so you have a sense of where we are. So we are located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are an urban campus. Our Pittsburgh campus is an urban campus, private research university. We have over 16,000 students, pretty equally split between our undergraduate and graduate students, over 5,700 employees within 7 schools and colleges. And our main campus is over 50 buildings on 155 acres. So that's the campus university. And then we're going to just give you a little background into what each parts of that campus that we represent. So Fethiye is going to start with herself.
Okay. So hello, everybody. Fethiye Ozis here. I am an associate teaching professor in civil and environmental engineering. Excuse my voice because I've been coming over COVID for the past couple of days. We're listed as number 7 and number 10 for undergraduate environmental and civil engineering program by the U.S. News and World Report. We have about 50 undergraduate students and about 400 graduate students. And my responsibility within the department as a teaching professor is to teach first-year project course, which we call Explore Civil and Environmental Engineering, and the senior design course. I'm teaching sensing in civil and environmental engineering students for undergrads. And then at the graduate level, I'm teaching climate adaptation and life cycle assessment courses.
Excellent. So I represent the campus's Green Practices program. So this is basically our environmental sustainability initiatives. I've been with the university about 3 years, but this program started about 30 years ago, working on recycling and waste management, energy conservation, water management, and managing a number of our university commitments, including STARS reporting, our greenhouse gas inventories. We're a tree campus and an arboretum. different initiatives like that within that environmental operational means. So my title is Green Practices and Sustainability Manager, and I sit in the facilities department. So how did we meet? How did this collaboration start? So I would give a green roof tour. CMU has a green roof of some sort on 15 buildings. So part of the CEE intro class is a tour of a handful of these spaces to learn about the different green roof types and things like that. So one of these tour years, the professor had to have a substitute professor come in, and that was Fethiye, and we enjoyed chatting with each other in between stops along the tour. I also run a campus committee that I chair as the staff co-chair, and I just happened to have an opening for a faculty co-chair, and the timing was perfect, and I hounded Fethiye for a little bit, and finally she agreed to co-chair with me. And just about at the same time, she was about to take over a course that needed somebody to work on a waste program, and she was recommended to chat with me about that. And luckily, we had already been chatting, so it worked out perfectly. So from that, she invited me to serve as the client for a class project. And so that's what this presentation is going to be about, is our collaboration, me as the client, and her class as the consultant. So we will give you I will give you a little bit of background about the problem that I posed to the students, and then we'll get into what the students did to solve that problem. So what was the problem? So as many of you saw, so this chart is our chart of diversion. So the gray areas are our municipal solid waste, our landfilled waste, and the blue is how much we are diverting. So as many of us saw, a pretty steep drop off during the pandemic as our campuses were pretty empty. And hopefully many of you are seeing an increase back to previous rates of diversion. And while we are moving upwards and regaining our recycling diversion, our items, our landfill has increased at a slightly steeper pace. We all got a little bit too used to disposables during the time when we were disposing of everything. So that caused us to think a little bit more about opportunities. So what were we currently doing? So we have 4 main waste streams on campus. So we have 2 streams of recycling. We have paper, bottles and cans, and then compostables in all of our dining areas, and then landfill. So these are our 4 main streams that we are diverting on. And we have a handful of other limited specialty recycling opportunities. Most of these are those universal waste options, or e-waste and e-media, kind of those usual suspects that you see in terms of this specialty recycling. So we are asking ourselves questions of what we do next. So I swear this is not a sponsored presentation, though Plan is sponsoring this webinar. We look to Plan and their Atlas program. The first stage is the zero waste certification, which involves a very thorough assessment of the campus's current practices, purchasing, disposal, policies, and all of that. So we jumped into that with a student fellow assessing how we were doing, looking at what they call the scope 1 hard goods and the scope 2 soft goods. So from this assessment, they gave us sort of a big list of the things that we were doing all right and the things that we needed a little bit of improvement on. And so this is sort of a little bit of a look that you aren't intended to actually read all the bits and bobs here, but you can see the colors on the left. And the one section that really stuck out as an opportunity, because we had 2 big red squares there, was our hard to recycle materials area. So again, while we were doing those sort of universal waste items, there really was a lot of opportunity where other colleges and universities had found ways to divert some of their hard to recycle materials. So this was a good inspiration for us of what could we do. So we had a list of 19 things that we had said no to in the survey, And I basically handed that list to Fethiye and said, have your students just solve this for us. So I will hand it over now.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, that was the initial motivation. And as an environmental engineer who is teaching this course for the first years, this is like a survey course, which is offering 12 units. So there's quite a bit of meetings during the week. We are meeting on Mondays and Fridays for 50 minutes, and then we're meeting 2 hours on Wednesdays. These are called building days or testing days. But I was offered to choose any topic related to civil and environmental engineering in a globally challenging and challenged world. And I'm like, waste is my area. I have been trained as an air quality engineer, and I really like to make a change in terms of the way that we manage waste. So the 3 projects that this course usually offered, one is offering project management related, one was related with environmental engineering, the other one was civil engineering. And for the environmental engineering, I wanted to focus on waste minimization, circular economy, and life cycle assessment. So this is exposing to many first-year civil and environmental engineering students. Some of them are undecided. There's a few sophomores or seniors who are still trying to take this introductory level course as to satisfy their requirement, because they need to take at least 2 introductory to engineering classes before they graduate. I'm going to be talking about in detail what this project is all about, but if you like to pursue this even further or like to get more information about this, you can also scan this QR code. That's going to take you to Keen Engineering Unleashed website. And what Keen is just a nonprofit organization that is available for anybody and everybody. You can sign up for free, and they make a lot of the cards and activities available for faculty who would like to adapt in their courses. You're going to see every little bit of detail, every assignment associated with this module presented there in that Keen card with a number of 4122. It's free to sign up, free to download, free to work with. So when we were introducing this module, we wanted to say it needs to tie into the learning objectives associated with Keen guidelines too. Keen is very big in terms of having students develop this curiosity. So they call these 3 C's: curiosity, connections, and creating value. So when I was coming up with the learning objectives for this module, I said, let's just start with the basic Bloom's taxonomy, start with explaining what the principles of circular economy and cradle-to-cradle design is, then explaining Atlas waste certification. They needed to understand what plan was all about, what is our zero waste score for campus, and what are some other practices indicated already, so that they can identify best practices for those hard to recycle materials. I want them to not just reinvent the wheel, right? Look at other institutions, just like a regular research topic. You would like to look at others and what they have done so that they can make these connections. To propose the final solution for their top choice, as Debbie was serving as our client, we wanted them to apply these critical thinking skills, learn from others, and examine our campus, look at the greater Pittsburgh needs, and develop some solutions in terms of what CMU can do for these hard-to-recycle materials, so that they can present a value proposition that turns waste into wealth by creating value, again, to satisfy what Keen 3 C's are all about. For the project implementation, this has taken place over 8 lessons. Lesson 1 was project kickoff. Debbie came in as our client, introduced herself, talked about CMU and the current existing practices, and then we played a little game in terms of waste sorting so that students could see what needs to go into composting, what needs to go into the recycle bin, and of course, regular trash bin. This was a lot of fun to put the teams into competition. Debbie had quite a bit of materials already collected, and they were getting this out of the brown bag and putting it into the right, and they were racing against each other. It was quite a competition. That was quite fun. Lesson 2 introduced stakeholders in waste management, and this was another keen card that I have benefited from. And they have already like personalities and skits. So role play is an important way for students to learn. They put themselves in somebody else's shoes and try to understand the problem from their perspective so that their critical thinking would develop. In lesson 3, we asked them to play a flip card game that was online so that they could see the material's life cycle and the environmental footprint associated with that. And I tied it all around civil and environmental engineering. I wanted them to understand one of the biggest environmental footprint associated stuff is concrete or steel, the stuff that our future civil engineers are going to be working with. So it's important for them to play a game and learn that way. And lesson 4 was referring to a life cycle analysis, a little bit of terminology development in terms of circular economy. And then I wanted them to do a little bit of activity with maybe thinking about a device and where they go. So the creative part for this one was like, I asked them to, as an option, come up with a rap song. And unbelievably, I think I had about 12 teams or so. 4 teams came up with a rap song. And I'm just going to play this 50-minute. I like to make sure, though, that you are still seeing my screen. Yes? Okay, great. And then the volume is high, hopefully.
About bricks, they're stronger than sticks. I need lime, sand, and clay. For all these bricks I'm gonna lay. They lay the foundation for our prospering nation. Our buildings can grow tall and they probably won't fall. We recycle our bricks and they can be pebbles. With these crushed up bricks, all surfaces can be leveled. If you need beds for your flowers, you can crush old bricks into powders. These bricks are so cool, it's like they have powers. Sand, lime, and clay can be reused all the way. We recycle every day. No landfills for us, so Dr. Ozis won't bust. Bricks are clearly the best. Now we digress.
This was also a lot of fun to get to see and, turn them into songs and lyrics that they can talk about where the device is coming from or brick and where it's going to end up and what it could be. So there's a lot of creativity around these classes and active learning. Lesson 5 builds on this sustainability, life cycle analysis, and wrap up the whole module before they are really given time to think about some other things. And we would like to, of course, have some hands-on build time. And we decided, let's have best out of the waste as a competition as well. We asked our students to put together whatever they can find, clean recyclables, bottles, you name it, right? Yogurt cups or whatever else. They can be recyclable or non-recyclable, t-shirts and whatnot. And they were working on some things creative that we're going to talk about in the next slide. And then, of course, giving them a little bit more project time and then final presentations to propose Debbie as our client with some alternatives that CMU could work on and finding ways to do better with those hard to recycle materials. So again, if you like to listen to all those 4 rap songs, here's the QR code for you to listen to. They were a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. This best out of the waste, again, asking them to complete or bring whatever they can collect over the weekend. Boxes, cardboard, plastic cups and plastic bottles and whatever else. And I brought up some stuff myself. They were provided all the materials like hot glue guns or scissors or you name it with arts and crafts stuff. And they needed to come up with best out of the waste. That could be a prototype of some sort that would be used for reducing further waste and helping with the waste minimization, or that could be an engineering solution for something that could be used potentially. The one on the left top here is hydroponics. They came up with these bottles at the bottom. They had these strips feeding into the flower bed that was composed of their flowers. Here you see with the plastic cups and whatnot. And I think they were growing some, like crackers and stuff, just because the boxes were saying so. In any case, the bottom here is all about making recycling fun. And they came up with the idea that what if we have a portable headset for any type of trash can that turns recycling into more like a hoop, you know, and then they can score that way. So they came up with this idea, and they were very happy with that solution in terms of like making, again, recycling fun. So getting the recyclables into the recycle can is a challenge. And then, of course, the right top here, you see a dollhouse that is also made with complete recyclable items. And they were thinking that this could be quite useful for people who are looking for, again, ideas for their kids to stay happy, healthy, or engaged with some stuff that they can do. Some people were really into sculptures. They were thinking that top left, this was going to be a big sculpture right in the center of the city to inform, for example, people in terms of where their waste go and what it does. So it was supposed to be like a waste tree. And then we have some groups came up with really creative designs for flowers and vases. And this one is still in my office, decorating my office. And then we had another team come up with a mobile that could go on top of a baby crib if wanted, but all made out of, again, recyclable materials and reused materials. So this was an idea of first think about how much waste they were generating on individual basis and what they can do with it, so that some stuff could find another use, another purpose before they are really dumped into the trash. That was the idea. For the final presentations, we had a lot of teams, again, focusing on these different hard-to-recycle materials. Each team was assigned to a specific hard-to-recycle material, and they, talked about porcelain and what maybe some others are doing by presenting them as case studies, and then proposing CMU to adopt or what they can adopt. Wood and sawdust was another team's presentation. Again, they are looking at what we do here at CMU and what other schools have done and what we should do moving forward. Textile, this was phenomenal because the group ended up having like a textile resale, I think, event on campus as well, and participated in that one. But again, just presenting these different ideas and what others are doing and what CMU can do better with the future was really tremendous help. And the collaboration between Debbie and I did not just end by the end of the semester. We also moved it into the summer research. Debbie is going to talk more about that.
So I'll just quickly mention that one of the students that participated in an earlier course was able to do a summer research project, taking some of this work, chose 2 of these items, and really was able to dig in to more details of what we could turn some of these suggestions and case studies into full processes, developed a proposal for lab plastics, and is well into developing a proposal for wood waste on campus as well. Which we actually generate a lot of during our spring carnival, where they build giant booths out of a lot of wood. Anyway, so this is an exciting next step, and we're excited to make this hopefully become a reality this fall. So that is our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. That was great. That was really great. We do have a question here. Someone was wondering if you could share the link to the flip card game that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
Which would be wonderful. And if you have the ability to put that in the chat, that would be great. And then, so also a question that came in was about, I guess, kind of addressed to Stanford, was about how you structure your student positions. Do the students try to complete these projects within a semester or a year, or maybe year after year if students are returning? Could you potentially speak to that?
Was it for CMU? Sorry.
That was for Stanford.
Okay.
I guess, well, either way, you could also chime in if there's something.
Yeah.
It's not for either. It's for both.
I can just jump in real quick and say the fellowship positions are over a year. And then the baton is either passed to another fellow to continue the project, or they find a closure over that 1 year. Usually the intern positions are the same, but we do have shorter term intern positions in the summer as well, but most of them are over the year. Anything you want to add, Julie?
Yeah, I really like how we have this year-long process, and kind of the goal is like in the fall quarter, you're doing your research, you're trying to figure out, like, you have a problem statement, your all fall quarter is about reaching out, trying to find, potential solutions. Winter quarter is about, running pilots, trying to set things up. And then spring quarter about evaluating and seeing, what went right, what went wrong. And then that all leads to this presentation at the symposium of kind of this results. So the whole year long is kind of a nice process, because then you have like kind of markers of where you should be in your project. And all of our interns and our fellows know that there's this symposium at the end, and that they're going to do a presentation on it. So that makes them kind of like really get focused on what they have to do, because they don't want to be at that symposium and have nothing to present. So we that's kind of how we keep our interns and fellows accountable throughout the year, is like, hey, you've got the symposium. And last thing I'll say is, as I'm remembering, we also require data. Like all of these projects, you've got to be able to collect data. Again, something you're figuring out in your fall quarter. How do you collect data on this, so that you can use it and then also present on it?
Yeah, I want to come back to that in just a second, more about the symposium. But another question that came in is, Zach writes, so often waste from local businesses end up needing to be disposed of on campus, and it can be challenging asking local businesses to make change. He's curious if any of the students have worked with businesses to make waste reduction implementations.
Not directly with the businesses, but I have instructed my students to make specific suggestions to Debbie. So when they were saying like, hey, here's what we can do for the rubber gloves, for example, I wanted them to find a business within the Pittsburgh area that could help CMU accomplish that. So they were just reaching out to a couple businesses that way. Not necessarily worked with them, but at least have understanding about what their business is up to, what they were doing.
And I'm going to ask a question of my own, if I may. I'm just curious. A lot of times these sustainability projects have an operational focus, and I'm wondering how they sometimes will fall into a queue, and the sustainability office might not have the traction to prioritize those projects. And I'm wondering if either of you or any of you could speak to, or have any advice on how you can get those projects kind of to move up in the queue when you're working with project managers, architects, engineers, facilities managers, things like that.
Christopher, do you want to go first, or?
I could kick it off briefly to say, I think that some of our success, I think, has relied upon leaning on our operational partners to pre-vet and prioritize the projects. And so that reduces friction and tensions that might otherwise form. And we are convening and facilitating and guiding that process and creating the structures for that. And we're collaborating to ensure that our partners have the resources that they need to pursue their priorities, and ultimately trusting that is in support of the enhancement of all of the sustainability efforts on campus. So, I think that it can be tricky doing calls for projects more on a student side from the academic side, because they may not easily jive with the operational priorities of the campus.
Right.
Yeah.
I can,
go ahead.
sorry, I'm just gonna jump in a little bit.
Yeah,
I found that often I will have a list of things that have been mentioned of interest, but again, it's just not quite in my bandwidth. So having a student who is ready to take on a lot of those things helps move it forward. And we always make sure that when we're talking with campus partners, because we get a lot of these theoretical sort of projects where I think your answer is a little bit different to the questions when you actually are intending to implement, as opposed to like a theoretical implementation. So we're very clear that the students want to move this forward and are asking honestly about what that's going to take. And I think as much as I'm always very upfront about, this is not going to take a week. This is gonna, and you know, like Stanford, the year-long projects, these are gonna take some time. And sometimes the solution really is that it is too complicated to get done. We've had multiple projects like that, and I think the students understand just as much from that to see how intricate these operational initiatives can sometimes be, that it helps them learn kind of patience and understanding before they head out into the real world as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're right at 3 o'clock. So for folks who aren't going to jump off right away, I'll just say, and I just mentioned in the chat, our next webinar will be on October 17th. We'll cover how to write a zero waste plan, which is also a very popular topic. I want to thank our presenters today, Fethiye and Deborah and Julie and Christopher. Thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, the slides will be available at some point, not right away, but give us a few days to get them up. The webinar recording will be up on our website, which is curc3r.org. Also, thanks to PLAN, the Post-Landfill Action Network, for sponsoring this webinar. And thank you for Alex for joining us today as well. Really appreciate it. It's a minute over, so we're going to stop the recording. For folks who are hanging out, feel free to chat. But thank you as always for joining
us.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Thank you.